Hello and welcome to a very special 100th episode of Simplify TV, the web series and podcast for agencies, brands, marketers, and media buyers. I'm David McBee. Today we are joined by Simplify's co-founders, Frost Prelo and Paul Harrison. We'll be talking about Simplify's roots, what has propelled the company over the years, and their vision for its future. But first, some proper introductions. Frost leads Simplify as the CEO. He's known for his knack for digital innovation and game-changing strategies that shape precise, data-driven campaigns. Frost's expertise takes programmatic capabilities worldwide, offering impactful solutions and cementing his spot as a top industry leader in the digital realm. Paul is Simplify's Chief Technology Officer. He's the driving force behind a revolution in digital advertising tech. Paul's visionary leadership puts Simplify at the forefront of programmatic advertising. He's all about creating cutting-edge solutions that empower advertisers, reshaping how data-driven advertising works, and making Simplify a trailblazer in the field. Frost, Paul, welcome to Simplify TV.
Thanks.
Thanks, David. Glad to be here. And congrats on the 100th edition of Simplify TV.
How about that? We started in March of last year, and we've been banging them out, and we've had some amazing episodes, and I'm so excited to have you guys here. All right, well, let's start with a little reminiscing. So if that's okay with you, I'd love to hear just about the early days of Simplify.
Paul, you want to go or you want me to go?
I can start with maybe a little bit of the background of how we got started. So in 2008, 9-ish timeframe, some of the larger players in the space were looking at creating a specification around doing real-time bidding for inventory. And so I was asked to give my input on some of that, and I could see what was the potential there and how it could change what we had been doing in the traditional network space. And so Frost and I were in the process of leaving to go do other things. Neither one of us necessarily knew exactly what we were going to do, but I started kind of kicking around this idea with another one of what ended up being one of our founders, a former engineer at Simplify, about how this specification could actually work. And so started putting together information. Frost, of course, wanted to know, okay, well, that's great. How do you make money with this? And how does it scale? And, all the usual questions. And so I started working on that. And Armin flew in, and it was in like 2009. And Armin and I met up with Frost and at my house, actually, and sketched it all out. I still have those pages somewhere on a board. And we talked through it and everything. And then, there was some refinement that had to happen. But that was sort of where the idea came from. And then we eventually came together and formed Simplify in January of 2010. So we're coming up on our 14th anniversary here. So that was sort of the beginning, early stages. Frost?
Yeah, no, that's totally right. We had sold Personify, and I was thinking, man, maybe it's time to take some time off, go travel, and so I'm very thankful that Paul and Armand, corralled me back in, because it's been a great journey with Simplify. I think from my perspective, and Paul was deep into the specs of programmatic, but it was just pretty clear that programmatic advertising was going to be a thing, and it was starting off. We were very early, very early, but it was pretty clear that this was going to be the way that most advertising would be, at least digital advertising, would be transacted going forward. It was just a much more efficient way for advertisers to find their targets and to drive leads and to make their businesses successful. So it was clear that was going to be a way. And thankfully, Paul and Armin had the smarts to figure out how to get that off and launched, and so we went from there.
but things didn't go exactly as planned, right? Like, I imagine your original goals are very different from the goals that you pursued a year or two later, right?
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say that it was kind of interesting. In the early days, the spec really just focused on display advertising, and that scaled very rapidly. But things change pretty quickly in our industry. We've always viewed them as opportunities, and I think that's a part of sort of our success here is the ability to be nimble and adjust to what's happening in the marketplace. But you're right. Display only had so many legs. Then it was like the year of mobile. Seemed like every year for years, and then finally that wave hit, and we clearly capitalized on that. And then the next big wave was, of course, the whole CTV wave, and that's been a big wave. I think that one still has a long ways to go, but there's been so many little iterations in there, curveballs thrown at us, browsers changing the way they do things, exchanges changing the way they do things without even notice, like deprecating IPs and things of that nature. So yeah, you're right. From an execution standpoint, a lot of curveballs, especially in the early days.
Yeah, I think also from the market side, we started off with a thing called search retargeting. And we said, hey, this is going to be great. We can deliver clicks on search terms like, red Toyota or new Toyota for much less than people were paying Google for those same clicks. And so that was our first target. And what we figured out pretty soon is that, well, that's great, but the search marketers had no budget to buy anything other than search. So they couldn't even buy display. And so it turned out, because of the infrastructure that we had built around unstructured data, which was really revolutionary and remains a huge differentiator today, this ability to target with very precise data and to get optimized against that data, to report on that data. It turned out that was a fantastic solution, not only for search marketers, but for any advertiser that really wanted to target very precise audiences. And so we said, well, we can do any size campaign. And we have lots of Fortune, as you know, David, lots of Fortune 500 customers on our advertiser roster. But we said this has some real unique benefits in some of the smaller advertisers, because it enables us to customize our audiences on the fly and optimize them on the fly, and then also get to performance. And because of that, get to performance much more quickly, and also deliver reporting that's much more insightful. So we said, wow, this is really differentiated for some of the smaller advertisers. And so our focus became, and it's evolved a little bit, but it's saying, hey, we're really building this, and over the years, as we know, into an advertising success platform, but with a lot of focus on delivering these world-class advertising tools to advertisers of any size, whether that's down to the local, car dealer or hospital or legal office, up to Fortune 500 companies.
Yeah, from my point of view, and viewers may not know, I've been the director of training for 10 and a half years at Simplify. So
thank you.
You're welcome. I remember, thinking I'm going to get bored training this over and over and over, but I've never been bored because it's constantly changing. It's very different.
And then you think of the matrix. We started off with one targeting tactic, and as Paul mentioned, on one media type and display. So as we've gone, our targeting tactics have multiplied. I don't even know how many, 10 or what have you. And then the media types have also multiplied from, as Paul mentioned, display, video, CTV, mobile, et cetera. It depends on how you want to slice media types. But the matrix now of the thing. And so an early decision was, we're going to be an omni-channel platform, which also was a decision we made pretty early on. And that's absolutely shaped where we've come.
Yes, I would say, I think if we hadn't made the decision to have the unstructured data set up, we wouldn't have been able to pivot the way we did. We also, early on in the platform, separated out the targeting tactics from the creatives. They weren't rolled into one. A lot of platforms, built all around just display, and you could clearly see that there was going to be more opportunity in the future. And without those kinds of early decisions, we wouldn't have been able to pivot and do the things that we do today. And as a result of some of those decisions, another one was, of course, the we decided not to be heavily reliant on the cookie. Even in the early days, even when we would set a cookie, we would just stick an ID in there as a cross-check against our primary mechanism for identifying users. And if we hadn't made that decision, we wouldn't be in the position we are today, because a lot of the competitors out there are going to really struggle over the next few years as the browsers continue to evolve.
Honestly, Paul, every time I ever had a conversation with you about cookies, you just started the conversation by rolling your eyes. Like, this is not a big deal. We got this. And it continues to be. So I guess that leads to the question, like, where do you get this vision? How are you constantly able to pivot to what's coming? And like, CTV is huge, and we've, just started to scratch the surface. How did you see that coming so easily?
Well, some of the early decisions were made because there were pain points. For example, when Safari in 2008 decided to start deprecating third-party cookies as a default, that really shook things up in the data space. And I said, I never want to be put in that position again. And so that was one aspect of it. The other was, the reason we went with the unstructured data was because I never understood where the data came from in segments, how they were built, how old the data was, and I couldn't even tell you why a segment was working or not working. And that was the most frustrating thing for me, because a client would say, I've run this segment for 3 months and it worked great, and now it doesn't work anymore. Why is that? I had no answer for them. So understanding what was happening under the hood was a key part. But in terms of really driving beyond those early decisions and the early framework we put in place, it's really been about bringing amazing people on board. We have a fantastic senior vice president of engineering. He's just fantastic at organizing around all the things that are coming, getting people moving in the right direction. We have a fantastic VP of product. He's done great work in terms of driving some of the visionary things that we talk about, taking, things that Frost talks about and I talk about, and stuff that we hear from sales and coming out of client services, and really making those things tangible. And I think that's really made the difference. I say that all I did was provide sort of a direction, but everybody else made it so much better.
Somehow I knew you would shift the conversation off of yourselves and onto the people of Simplify. So Frost, what do you think about your team and their role in Simplify success?
Yeah. Well, and Dave, you've heard me say this many times. I mean, people say, like, what's sort of been the main factor, but probably us getting to where we are today. We were very fortunate to hire some great people early on. Personally, for me to partner with great people early on, and Paul and Armin especially, and they have gone on and hired great people. And so we've tried to make it Simplify a place that people that attracted the best in the industry, where people could do great work, where people enjoyed coming to work. I hope that we've been able to do that, and that's absolutely been the number one piece of the number one factor in getting us to where we've grown to.
Yeah, it's 100% right. I could spend a whole episode just talking about all the amazing things that all the contributions people have made, and the ideas they come up with. I would have never thought of that idea, but it's sort of like they're building on this foundation that we set a long time ago.
Yeah, like the Simplify TV thing. Like, who came up with that?
I don't know, but it's a huge feather in our caps, right? It's like one of the best things Simplify's ever done. What do you want clients to know about Simplify? Anybody who is a current client or is considering working with Simplify, what do you want them to know about you?
So we're very much focused on their success, and so when we talk about the set of solutions that are evolving, that we've both acquired, built, and we're continuing to integrate, they're all focused around how can we make our clients more successful? How do we roll out to them an advertising success platform, an advertiser success platform that helps them get greater ROI. It helps them drive customers. It helps them be more efficient in what they do. And so as we do that, and part of the reason we do that is we want to be the best partner they have. So if they think of like, hey, who can help us, whether it's the advertiser, the agency, or our local media companies who work with us, that we want to be seen as a partner in their success, that we're very focused, because we know that if they're successful and we can help them get there, then that will make us successful. So that has been our focus. We've kind of encapsulated that. And we're very focused on moving. We work with a lot of customers very deeply on what we consider partnership levels. We have some customers we're more transactional with, and so we'd like to move as many of those customers as possible where it makes sense to be more partner level, where we can deliver more value to them, and they feel that value in their success.
All right. So, what does the future of Simplify look like?
I'll jump in first there, and Paul can as well. The best, as you hear often, absolutely the best days of Simplify are in front of us. We have a huge opportunity in advertising. And if you think about what we've been doing from day one, or very shortly after day one, has been bringing the state-of-the-art advertising technologies, as I mentioned earlier, to advertisers of all sizes. And that opportunity to continue, we're just barely scratching the surface with the number of advertisers that we're working with in the U.S. We will, in a typical month, as you know, work with 40,000 or more advertisers with 130,000 or so campaigns, and that's a small percentage of what's out there. So as we continue to build our tools around making it easier to give great results from advertising across all the digital channels and other channels that we work with, there's just a huge opportunity for us to expand that footprint and be helpful to more and more advertisers. So, we've got a long way, a huge, what they call TAM, huge available market to us, and we're just very early on in scratching that surface, especially as you get into CTV and retail media and a whole host of legs along which trajectories along which advertising is growing.
Yeah, so to drive that vision, we made some very strategic acquisitions. We're in the middle of modernizing those platforms and integrating those platforms so that you can do the entire life cycle of a campaign, from planning to execution, optimization, reporting. So we have all of the tool sets available. Now we're bringing them all together. And so that's sort of the driving force. That's the next few years of roadmap, is all about that. And one of the key areas in there is we're working to unlock the linear dollars into the CTV dollars. So you can see a lot of the tool sets we're doing are translating CTV into classic linear language so that linear buyers can transition into the CTV world much easier, and then that also opens up other opportunities into the whole omni-channel and the other parts of the funnel.
Good stuff, guys. All right. Well, before we close the episode out, I ask all of my guests if they have a favorite book or a favorite podcast that they feel has been instrumental in their success. Do you guys have something along those lines?
I do. Actually, Frost introduced me to a book called 4 Steps to the Epiphany. I have put together actually an outline for 4 Steps Simplified as a follow-up to that book. I sent it to the author. He liked the idea, but our journey's not quite done. His book was written largely on his experience in building the CRM Epiphany. That probably dates me a little bit, but that was a great CRM in the 90s. So as we build out the rest of Simplify and I continue to add to those notes, hopefully we will see a follow on to the 4 Steps to the Epiphany. I always recommend that book to people, especially entrepreneurs.
Yeah, maybe it'll be a movie someday. Who knows?
What about you, Frost?
I'm a fan of Michael Lewis books, and if you go back to one of the older ones was Moneyball, which I thought was just super interesting as a way to look at a industry, in that case baseball, through a totally different lens, using data driven insights and that. So I would say if I had to pick one, I'd probably say that one. There's some others that have impacted in other ways, but I'd say probably Moneyball.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me on this 100th episode of Simplify. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you, David.
And thank you guys for watching. Simplify TV is sponsored, of course, by Simplify, helping you to maximize relevance and multiply results with our industry-leading media buying and workflow solutions. For more information, visit simply.fi. Thanks for joining us today. I'm David McBee. Be awesome, and we'll see you next time.